So now let's talk about a few different structures for peer-to-peer feedback. As I mentioned, it's not always possible for one instructor to provide individualized feedback to every student in the class, and so sometimes it's more practical and also useful to have students practice during class, but then receive feedback from their peers on what they're learning and what they're practicing. So let's look at a few structures for doing that. One is the idea of peer instruction. We've talked about this earlier in the week in the context of clicker questions and peer instruction as a way to surface student misconceptions. Now I'll focus on the peer-to-peer piece of this. When you have students pair up and talk through a question together, it's a great opportunity for them, for lots of students in class, to get some peer feedback on how they understand things and how they're applying what they're learning. Now, you may wonder, during that pair discussion time, that peer-to-peer instruction time, are students actually learning during that process, or are they just kind of copying their friends' answers? And that's a question that a few researchers at the University of Colorado and the University of British Columbia wanted to explore. So this was a really interesting study that came out in 2009. The context was an undergraduate genetics class, and what they did was they developed a series of paired questions. So each pair of questions was what they called isomorphic. So they covered the same topic, they dealt with the same techniques, but they were different questions. So knowing the answer to one didn't guarantee that you knew the answer to the other, but they were similar enough that you could do some comparison. So what they did was they had students go through this kind of peer instruction sequence, and then they looked at how well the students did on these pairs of questions. And so you can see the results here. So in the first question of each pair, the average percent of correct answers across all the questions and students was 52%. Now, after students had a chance to talk about that same question, right, with their partner and then vote again, the correct response rate went up to 68%. Now, what's really interesting is when students were then asked the second question in that isomorphic pair, and they answered on their own without discussing it with their peers, the accuracy rate went up to 73%. So there were students who missed the first question in the pair, but thanks to whatever happened during that peer discussion, they were able to answer the second question in the pair accurately. And so I think this is pretty solid evidence that says that there's something really productive going on during that peer instruction phase, that it's not just kind of copycatting, but students are able to take what they've learned during that peer instruction phase and then apply it to a similar question down the road. Now, peer instruction is not the only structure for fostering peer-to-peer feedback. There are a variety of what are sometimes called challenge cycles in the literature that faculty have developed to try to foster this as well. This is one particular challenge cycle that was developed here at Vanderbilt, along with a few other institutions that were part of the VANTH project. This was a National Science Foundation funded project a few years back that involved getting educational researchers together with biomedical engineering faculty, looking at ways to create more evidence-based teaching strategies in biomedical engineering education. And one of their main kind of structures that they developed was this challenge cycle. So let me just kind of walk through it briefly. The idea is to start with an interesting challenge, a question that hopefully has some relevance to students. It's kind of a motivating problem. Students are going to have to kind of pull together a lot of information in order to solve that challenge. You start there. Then you move to this phase where you have students generate ideas, kind of a brainstorming phase. What do they know about this challenge? What do they don't know? What additional information are they going to need? That's often done in a kind of a combination of small group and large group settings. Then you move on to the multiple perspectives phase. Now, at this point, the instructor will then kind of share some additional information with the students relevant to the challenge, not solving it for them, but perhaps featuring maybe an article that's relevant or an interview with an expert that's relevant, giving students a few ideas and tools to kind of move them forward in solving the challenge. Then the students move into the research and revise phase. That's where they take what they've learned thus far and start to try to figure out some solutions to the challenge. And then they move into the test their mettle phase. Often this involves a prototype or a design of some sort, kind of a trial solution based on what they've figured out so far. And then there's a go public phase. That's where they share what they've done with the rest of the class typically. And then that leads into the next challenge, hopefully. This is a really nice structure. It leverages a lot of what we know about how people learn, and it involves a lot of peer-to-peer feedback along the way. Some of the feedback comes from instructors at different points in this, but a lot of it comes from within teams as they're moving through this challenge cycle. Now, you've probably experienced some real high-quality peer-to-peer feedback in your education. Often it comes in a somewhat structured peer assessment opportunity. These are some photos from an undergraduate biology lab here at Vanderbilt taught by Steve Baskoff. In this lab, students work in teams to do real research, actually. They have to kind of craft a research question and a research design and do some original research. At the end of the semester, they share their findings in a poster session. And during the poster session, students are asked to kind of walk around, view each other's work, ask questions, and give each other some feedback on this. You've probably been involved in some kind of poster session like this. There's other structures for peer assessment that are fairly common. So poster sessions are one. In-class student presentations often involve the students who are watching the presentation giving some feedback. If you have a writing component to your course, often there's some peer review of writing. These are all ways that we can help students give each other some structured feedback on what they're learning.